Hi, and welcome back to Let's Talk with Parul. It's a grim situation currently. In fact, I think it feels more like a really badly made disaster movie. But unlike a movie, the disasters just don't stop happening. The challenges that we as adults are facing are massive. But let's give a thought to what our children are going through. It was bad enough with isolation, with forced home confinement, with job losses for parents, with educational disruptions, and of course, excessive digital exposure, the entire warped human interactions that our kids were facing. But now they've had to face deaths of family members, for some, even their parents. Are we equipped to deal with this? What can we do to help our children deal with this very difficult time? Well, today in the studio, we have an expert who's going to help us through this, Dr. Amit Sen. Thank you so much, Dr. Sen, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. My pleasure.
Just to give you a little introduction, Dr. Amit Sen is a senior child and adolescent psychiatrist, and he's the director and co-founder of Children First India. He's been practicing child psychiatry for over 25 years, and we are the ones who are benefiting from all that experience. He's worked with both national and international organizations in the areas of trauma, child sexual abuse, juvenile justice. And today, we're going to be talking about how to bring our children out of this traumatic time. Dr. Sen, my very first question is going to be about a comparison between the first wave exactly this time last year and now. The situation has changed quite drastically, and you've been working with families across the country. Children First is running a special program called Rahat for children and parents affected with COVID. You must have heard it all. What are the stories that you're coming across this time? What is the ground reality?
So, if you want to compare the two, although both have had huge and profound impact on the mental health of young people, but this time, in the second time on, it is it's come into our homes, right? And in the first wave, uh, there was a sense that if we took precautions, if we adhere to all the safety norms, then it is not going to affect our family, our close and near and dear ones. And indeed, that's what was happening most of the time. Whereas this time, uh, the deaths and the number of people who have got affected, even the ones who have taken all kinds of precautions, has gone right through the roof. So from a time when it was at a bit of a distance, all the losses and the trauma, this time it has come right through the windows and doors of our homes, and it is affecting us directly. And so many of the young people have lost grandparents, some have lost their parents, and sometimes both their parents. And that is absolutely traumatic. And even more so, because when a family gets infected with COVID, some members do, some members don't. They get isolated from each other, they get separated from each other. And you can imagine young children getting separated from parents who might have got infected. And then just imagine the consequences of one of them losing their lives, and the children not even being able to be with their parents, not even being able to get the comfort they otherwise would have done, in a family situation. Again, typically speaking, if a family is affected by COVID, even the extended family or the community, the neighbors, even they won't come to, at least in the physical space, to come and support you. So you can imagine the impact of something like that, the isolation, the dread, the despair. It's absolutely deeply traumatic. It was always so. I mean, right, even in the first time it happened, it was happening out there. And in the beginning, when the lockdown first came, I think we were all, as families, scrambling to get our act together, because the home helps weren't coming, the schools were closed, we couldn't go to work, etc. And in the beginning, many families who were taking our service regularly, they said, no, we don't have the time right now, we have to sort out the mess at home and all that, right? But within the next 2 to 4 weeks, we started realizing how it was impacting the little children, the older ones, the adolescents, and even the young adults who had got isolated many times from their families. Many of them could not return home before the lockdown was announced. So we had a range of young people who were suffering emotionally. And of course, the lockdown had created three main things. One is, of course, the breakdown of or the disruption of daily life, which we don't realize how important these routines and rituals are. We think it's mundane, a part of life which we just take for granted. Children going to school, coming back, having lunch, doing their homework, going to play in the park, coming back, and then in the weekend, planning a date with their cousins or friends, or going out for a movie, planning a holiday after exams. All those things got disrupted completely, and that gave rise to huge amount of frustration and helplessness. People just didn't know how to deal with it. When these unseen structures around us the daily rhythms of life bring, it's like a scaffolding. It gives you a sense of safety and predictability, and it's vital, absolutely, for children to have that. And if they don't, then it begins to tell on their mental health and emotional health. The second thing, of course, that we lost was the institutional breakdown of everything, of schools, of
Right.
offices, of colleges, of transport, of hospitals. People couldn't even go to hospitals if they wanted to. If they had a stomach ache or somebody falling ill, people couldn't visit each other, when other family members were falling ill at that time. So that was, again, something that gave rise to a huge sense of, being let down and hopelessness. That what is going to
Right.
come of us, if this is the way things go. And what's more, repeatedly our hopes were dashed, because they said, okay, 4 weeks of lockdown. Then they say, oh, no, it's going to be
Right.
2 more months. Then it's going to
Right.
be December. Then no, and eventually, when we were just raising our heads, the second wave
Right.
came and hit us.
Right.
That was just as we were beginning to see a little light at the end of the dark tunnel.
Right.
It came and hit us, and that
The
was
schools had
such a
opened for a couple of days. Yeah.
yeah. The schools had opened, particularly the senior
Yeah.
classes. They had gone back, didn't they? Right.
Yeah.
And third thing that is, again, so important is the the loss of the of activities that bring joy and meaning to our lives, right? Simple
Yes.
things like,
Yeah.
just going out and playing for little kids, or the intimate spaces that the older kids have, when they hang out with their friends and their cousins, whether it's in a guitar class, or football coaching, or holidays together, or anniversaries and birthdays, celebrate those kind of things. All those things went out of the window, and there was no way of making choices. And that, I believe, has given rise to a deep sense of loss and sadness. And indeed, many young people started grieving much before the second wave hit us. Indeed, WHO, by the time it was October last year, they had started doing wide scale studies across nations, and they figured that amongst young people, adolescents, and young adults, there was a five-fold increase in the reporting of depressive and anxiety symptoms, in substance misuse, and in suicidal behaviors. So that was a kind of sharp increase that we saw even before the second wave hit us in India in the way it has. So one can just imagine what the young people must be going through, right? So yes, there is a lot of, so
Not
yeah,
beautiful.
anxiety, depression, substance misuse, unfortunately, again, a lot of suicidal behaviors, and some very, very tragic outcomes from them. We have got to know of people we know, of organizations that we work with,
Right.
who take care of young people. We have had some heartbreaking tragedies, indeed.
It's really, it seems to be never ending right now. I mean, we're all living in hope, but I think that like you said, another 2 months, that hope is also just getting pushed back every time.
True, true.
So at this time last year, I think for most of us parents, it was a much lighter feel because it was happening, like you said, it was happening at a distance. And my biggest worry was, what's going to happen because there's no social interaction. Schools are shut and I'm not letting them go and meet their friends. So zero physical activity, zero social interaction, both of which are always the fulcrum of children's lives. And like you mentioned, the institutional breakdown as a whole, and the loss of those safe spaces and everything. By this time now, within that past 1 year, that frustration has built up to an all-time high level. The anxiety and the frustration, it's all just pent up. And I mean, and like you must be seeing, and the case you mentioned, it must be coming out in various ways. So
Yes.
right now, even just, if you're not going into the grief and the loss part of it, just that social anxiety and that frustration, what can we as parents do to nip it in the bud? And I think that that ship has sailed probably. But yeah, what can we do at this stage?
Okay, so to start with, I think it's important to understand the different ways that anxiety, fear, and the
Yeah.
stress of all this can manifest in children, isn't it? So in the younger children, it is often seen in behaviors, right? So they can, for instance, stop sleeping at the regular times. They might lose their appetite and then begin to demand junk food all the time. After some time, they might start having mood swings, become oppositional and defiant. There are, slamming of doors and temper tantrums and meltdowns that begin to happen. Of course, like I said, the biological rhythms of sleep and appetite are affected.
All gone.
Then it can, yeah, yeah, and then of course there is a overdose of screen, as you rightly said right in the beginning, and because everything is on the screen, isn't it? And whether it's their schooling, education,
Yeah.
recreation, social connect, everything is out there. So again, there's
Right.
a huge amount of angst about that, and more children find that as an escape from the stark reality outside, outside in their homes now, even in their homes or outside, isn't it? And then of course when things become even worse, then the younger ones can start becoming very clingy, crying very easily. Some of them, the littler ones, might start bedwetting again, and amongst the older ones, you see again, them isolating themselves, and huge amount of interpersonal conflicts between siblings, with parents. And what typically happens when the behavioral problems begin to surface, uh, because parents themselves are going through so much of anxiety and uncertainty in their lives, they want to bring things under control, as parents often do, right? When things are chaotic, they want to bring it under control. And when they begin to impose more boundaries and structure, it goes south, it goes the other way. It becomes counterproductive because already the kids are suffering emotionally. And if you only address the behaviors and try to discipline them and get them to bed at the right time and make them have two healthy meals in a day, it doesn't work anymore, right? So you have to be creative in those circumstances, and that's what's happening with many families. We saw that in their own anxiety and fear that the children are going completely out of hand, they're getting too much of screen, or not sleeping at the right time, or behaving badly, so to say. They clamp down so hard that the children become even more sad, even more distressed, and the behavioral problems might go away for a bit, but actually the emotional damage is far greater. So we have to think creatively about what to do. The first thing that I think we need to do is, of course, create an emotionally safe space, you know, at home, because there's so much of, unsafety, if you like, around. Everything is unsafe now. Going out is unsafe. Meeting your friends is unsafe. Having food delivered is also considered
Yes.
unsafe. So where,
Yeah.
yeah. So where do you go from there, right? So firstly, to create that emotional safety at home by having spaces where adults are able to listen to their children with their heart, with their ears and eyes all together, and without wanting to jump and get find solutions too quickly. Uh, Again, what happens is that when young people begin to express their angst through their behaviors, or through through language, or verbally, many times as parents we get so anxious that we are immediately looking for solutions, and that actually shuts them up. That makes them withdraw. Children are often not looking for that. In fact, just the other day, I was talking to a set of parents who were talking about their young adult now, who was pouring his heart out, and his mother, who usually is the listener, had something to say about what he could do or what he should not do, and immediately she stopped her and said, "I don't want you to give me solutions. I'm not looking for it. I'm looking for you to listen and understand what I'm going through."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to create that atmosphere where children feel understood, they feel held, they feel that there is somebody to listen to them from their heart and empathize and have that deep connect. That's the first step, I think. That's the first
Right.
step that we need to do. The second thing is, we often say that don't, sort of maintain that hierarchy anymore, because adults are also as equally clueless. It's not as if we know
Yeah.
better than young people do. Indeed, if you ask some of the teenagers and young adults, they might come up with better solutions than adults can in situations, because they particularly with the digital media and the creative minds that they have, they often can actually, if they're given the opportunity to have a discussion about it. So to have a collaborative approach, to tell the young person that, okay, do let me know what you're going through, and then I'll tell you what my views are, and then let's have a a collaborative approach. Let's dovetail, what our needs are and see what we can do together. That's the second thing that we need to do, right? Again, I would like to emphasize the need for respect, the need, because unless you are respectful in the way you approach children, the trust that is breaking so quickly around us, and that's a thing that happens during traumatic situation. Trust in everything around us, including other human beings, that breaks down. And one of the things that we can do at homes is to be able to create that safe space so that the trust begins to build, create that mutual respect of listening to each other, to empathize with each other, and then of course also give you know an allowance for young people to have their own space, to have boundaries and say, I want to do some things on my own, please don't disturb me. I want to get into my room and talk to my friends, and that should be all right. And we have to be more flexible than we were before the pre-COVID times right now. Yeah. So that's the other thing, that we have to be respectful of their personal spaces as well, and that actually makes them, in fact, in our own experience with our own two young adults that we have at home, and with many families that we work in, the moment you do that, when you begin to open up these discussions and are respectful about their spaces, they themselves will come out because they will feel safer in your
Right.
company. It
Right.
works the other way. The more space, the more freedom you give them, the more they are able to come and connect with you. And so these are the few things that one can do. And then once you have established that, you can then begin to maybe form a kind of a loose structure at home. And how do you do that, right? You can talk about how our roles have changed. For instance, as a student, we're not going to school again, we're not mingling with our friends, we're not doing all the other extracurriculars. So how do you make schooling, learning interesting, right? Because online classes can become such a drag
Yeah.
sometimes, isn't it, right? So again, in the discussion, many times, many families have come up with novel ideas like, okay, let's pick up a topic and we'll all do some reading, and if we don't feel like reading, watch a documentary together and let's discuss it. Let's have a debate about it. That's learning as well. So as a student, your role can change. Your The way it looks can begin to become different within that week, where it's not just about online classes. It could be about encyclopedias. It could be about documentaries. It could be about discussions at home. Yeah. And similar
Right.
to that, the adults should also, open up with the kind of, the way their roles have changed as a professional, as a, as a, you know, homemaker, whatever it could be.
Right.
But our roles have also changed, and it's important to put it out there and say, look, I'm also struggling with my office space and my personal space and my family space, right? And what am I doing about it? What can I do to make sure that I do have a professional space which is separate from my home and family space, right? So those kind of discussions can happen in that space. And then the second thing that can be discussed is that and this is a good opportunity to do that, is about household chores. A lot of
Oh,
families do
yes.
not have the home help, isn't it? Right? And to open it up and say, okay, who wants to help in cooking? Who wants to kind of help in
Ex-
the dusting and cleaning and so on? And people can raise their hands and say, I'm going to do this. So that gives them a bit of ownership and a sense of control too, right? And the third
Right.
thing, of course, I would emphasize is each one should say, how do they want to spend family time? Do they want to watch a board game, play
Right.
a board game, watch a TV show together? Do they want to
Right.
dig into their past and bring up photos, etc., to see and to remember what's happened, how the holidays were in the past, because that gives you a lot
Yes.
of relief and enjoyment and joy again, right? Because you see, joy and hope. So again, before I move on to that, once you have established these three domains of your daily existence at home, you can ask each person to have a loose structure to the day, right? And put a bit of something from each one of these three categories: your role as a student or a professional, as a homemaker, your contribution to household chores and family time, and create a loose structure, somewhat collaboratively if you can, and then each day that structure can change. So I urge of young people often to take stock of their day in the evening. So see what has happened and say, okay, I was able to attend some online classes, do some homework, and but you know what? I could hardly spend some family time today. Let me see how I can change that tomorrow. So each day is a new day to be able to take stock of it and say, tomorrow I'm going to do this, this, and that. and announce it to the rest of the family. This is what I've decided to do. And that brings a sense of structure and a sense of predictability to the days ahead. Because you see, there is nothing outside which is giving you that structure, is there?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
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 So, the other big thing that the second wave has done is in a very devastating manner, taken away any hope that we had of things
Right.
becoming normal, hasn't it? Right?
Mm.
And because
Absolutely.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, and if you think about it, so much of our existence, our identity and sense of self comes from the future. Young people
Sure.
who are wanting to go to college, who are wanting to go for a holiday, who want to define what their career and profession will look like.
Right.
Everything is in a hit right now, isn't it? And for them to peg their, anchor in the future is no longer possible because there is so much of uncertainty. People are already talking about a
Right.
third wave. Where are we going to go? Are children going
Yeah.
to go to college? Are schools going to reopen? Are they going to go back to their tennis coaching and their art classes? Who knows? We don't even know that, right? So where do you peg your hope? You cannot. So you take a step back from hope and say maybe hope for the future particularly is not something that we have readily available right now. So what can we do in the here and now? So like I said, that planning the day not just in things that are essential, but also in the recreational activities, in things that give you joy. I often talk about, and these are suggestions which young people have, come up with in family gatherings, etc., where they've said that it'll be great if we can look at the books that our parents used to read to us when we were little children. And indeed, in our own family, we have done that. We've picked up those books, and each one has picked up a couple of books, and we've sat together and read out those books of our choice, and it brings back such warm memories. Many times when we go for holidays, and we've taken dozens and hundreds of pictures, but we've never looked at them because there's
Yes.
hardly time.
Yes.
In the rush of, our lives, we hardly ever get time to actually ponder on those. And it's important then to dig up those things. Motives at home. There are old videos lying around. There are books lying around. There's old music lying around. Bring it out and then relive your life again in ways that makes it richer. We call it reauthoring your lives. So often in the rush of life, we fail to imbibe what we have experienced. And this may be the time to go back into our memory banks to be able to, dig out some of those rich experiences and make our story once again. And that also gives a sense of identity. It gives a sense of richness to our lives. So even if we don't have hope immediately, although in the long term there is, I'm sure there is hope. I'm sure things would improve. But right now, because it's shaken and we're shaken by the onslaught of the second wave, we can stay in the here and now and look back into our past and rich memories from there, and that might help to rebuild our lives again, and help us to find meaning again, and say yes, these are our
Yeah.
values, this is what we treasure, this is what our family and friends are about, and to sort of build the connect again. The other day my wife had picked up boxes of pictures. Those days it was not digital, and our children were little and they were babies, and we were going through all those pictures and telling stories to each other about how we remember it. Our kids remember things from the time they were 4 or 5 in ways that we never knew. I said, "Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Do you remember that incident?" He said, "Yes, of course. This is the way I saw it." And it brings another dimension to it,
Yeah.
and it makes your life richer again. So it's important to find the space and very consciously dive into some of these, crevices of the mind, as I say, right? And it will then make our life richer, despite the fact that the world isn't yours now, and hopelessness is central, it seems, in our lives just at the moment, at least at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. These are some really good suggestions. And Anjali Juneja, who asked how to inculcate positivity in kids, and Anupama Chetty, who asked how to get them out of social anxiety developed in the last 1 year. I hope this answers your question to some extent. We're going to be talking about a whole lot of different aspects also as we go along, but I think this is a
Can
great
I?
place to start.
Yeah.
Please,
Can,
please.
can I can I just add, because from the first question that you mentioned, that how are we going
Positivity.
to help positivity? So
Yeah,
firstly, you have to look within as parents. How much positivity can we hold in these times?
absolutely.
Because your children will imbibe, they'll absorb what you are feeling and thinking like a sponge, right? And
Right.
if you're able to, yeah, if you're able to build an atmosphere of a degree of stability and structure and a sense of who we are as people and family, even if there is not a lot of hope at this juncture, we may be able to bring that positivity back, right? So again, I would urge parents to look within all the time and see, how are we feeling? Are we constantly getting dragged into this pit of anxiety and fear because it's everywhere. It's in social media, it's on TV, it's on newspapers. You open anything, the first thing that hits you is the latest numbers of people who have got COVID, or the deaths that have been there in the different states, or the newest scientific research, or the failure of systems. It is there everywhere. So how do you take a break from that? And in fact, in that context, what I would suggest is what we call worry breaks, to stem the worry virus. There is the real virus and there is a worry virus, which also can, create havoc in our lives, right? And and worry breaks are basically, again, where you designate time individually or collectively as a family, where you sit together sometimes or sit individually to take stock of what's happening. So you can go through the WhatsApp messages, you can go through the news, and a lot of certain time, half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, maybe three times in a day, and say, I'm going to go through my messages, I'm going to go through the news in the morning. And once that time is over, I'll shut it and I will not think about it till my next break comes. And even if something crops up, a message comes or a worry comes, I have to tell myself, not now, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll wake you up, right? And that helps to free yourself to do other things that we talked about,
Yes.
connecting with things of meaning, which gives us a sense of identity and meaning in our lives, which brings back some of the joy that we have lost so much. Yeah.
No,
So,
absolutely. And
and
I, I'm guessing that takes a lot of training to do, because to put away a worry is not that easy. But like you said, put your mind to it and train yourself to do that.
Parul, it's actually many people benefit from it. So many young and
Yeah.
older people say that yes, it works. Because see, all you need to do, and if you think that your mind will forget it, if it's the one part of your anxious mind is pushing for it, it's compelling you to think about it, isn't it? And
Right.
you have to be firm then and say, not now. I'll make a note, keep a diary, put it in your phone, and say, I'll think about you at 2 or 6 in the evening, right? So whatever time that is, I will come back to you, but not now, right? And that
Right.
often works. Yeah, that often works because there is a an avenue. You see, if you do not give it an avenue, then it will keep cropping up whenever it wants,
Right.
isn't it? Yeah. Hmm?
I understand. Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
We have a lot of questions coming up, and since this one is directly related to what we were talking about, about assigning ourselves tasks that we want to do, assigning the family tasks that we want to do together, basically working out our day's schedule, so to speak. So Ashima Gupta is asking a question which I know a lot of us have the same issue. Let me just put that on the screen, in fact. My
Mm-hmm.
7-year old girl often complains nothing is cheering her up even after doing what all she wants, minus studies for now. She just wants screen time. I have fought
Mm-hmm.
that screen time battle and I've given up because I realize that is their world right now. And I can't possibly take them away. That's like you said, Dr. Sen, that's where their
Mm-hmm.
social interaction is, that's where their recreation is, that's where their entertainment is. But what would you advise the mom of a 7-year-old?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's tough. See, the first thing I would say is that don't discount the screen time completely. So screen time is not all bad right now. It is giving a lot to us. Firstly, so again, screen time was always all bad, isn't it? But right now, screen time must be divided into academics and education because that's the reality,
Yes.
right? Into recreation, right? Which would include video games and TV shows, etc., and social interactions. If you can divide it like that, it may make more sense than to rationalize how much of what a child can do in a day. Yeah. So that makes it a little easier because then you can say, all right. And it also is lighter on the parent because if the child is doing, let's say, 6 hours of screen or 8 hours of screen in a day, you know that at least 2 or 3 hours
Yeah.
of that would be going into learning. A couple of hours will go into actually connecting with friends, and that's not so bad. So it gives us,
That's
as parents, as adults, a little solace, isn't it? Yeah.
right. Right.
And the
Right.
second thing, of course, is to create to create creative spaces at home, right? So
Yeah.
how can you replicate what the child used to enjoy earlier? And of course, each child is different. As a parent, you would know what your child takes to easily, whether it is art, whether it is music, whether it is an outdoor game. Can you create an atmosphere at home or a space at home where you move your furniture, etc., to give a semblance of space where you can do physical activity, for instance, right? Again, as I was saying, the different things one can do, which makes it, say, for a 7-year old, they often love to hear stories of when they were little, right? Or stories of when you, as a parent, were little and what you did, right? And you can bring back videos and pictures and books and you know uh, animated films that you would watch together. What was your first introduction? Did you start with Tom and Jerry or Mickey Mouse? All those little things actually begin to make sense, right? So there will perhaps be a little bit of stream there, but there could be other
Yeah.
creative spaces as well. You have to, with all your heart and
Yeah.
involvement, be a part of that. Get down on your knees and say, I'm going to do this. Do you want to come and join me? Right. So we've done that again in our family and so many other families I know. But as a parent, you have to take the lead. If you instruct and say that why don't you do painting right now, or why don't you get your Barbie dolls out and start playing right now, it may not work. But if you sit down with all of us together, including adults, and we all talk about, how bereft we are feeling sometimes, how bored we feel sometimes, how
Sure.
monotonous life is now, and that's the reality. It's important to express it. Yeah,
Right.
it's important to express and accept these are difficult times, even for adults. And once children hear it, they feel better because they not, then know that this is actually not my fault. It's not my fault that I'm getting bored. It is a very difficult phase, isn't it? It's
Situation, right?
important to acknowledge it. Yes, it is
And
important
that
to
and the fact that we're all in it together. I think that's another
yeah.
important thing that you're pointing out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you're
Right.
able to do that with your children and not just treat them as children who only need to be instructed and told what to do,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
things might look very different. So again,
Right.
to create that emotionally safe space, to be able to have those discussions and then say, okay, so then can we do something together? What will excite you? What will interest you? And so on, right? And there may be a
Right.
drop down list of things, and there could be 5 things or 10 things for each child. And each day, the child, your 7-year-old, can choose that tomorrow I'm going to do these things because I'm bored of what I
Right.
did today, right?
Right.
And that might
Right.
then make sense, yeah.
Absolutely right. Well, this is another very unique situation that Bonita has pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if it's a longish quote, but I can read that out. My
Mm-hmm.
baby just turned 2, and last year lockdown began. In the last 1 year, she never saw anyone outside and went out very rarely after the lockdown, very much limited. The result is she's afraid of people around her. She's even afraid of people known to her, our extended family who live in other areas. She won't talk. She just hides and shivers and cries. Please help how to cope up. I'm trying to my best to make her comfortable. Because my
Mm.
kids are older, I don't think I've ever thought about children who've never
Yeah,
seen the outside world. This is
yeah,
heartbreaking. What does
it
this
is.
mother do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, what I'd like to say, Bonita, is that yes, part of it is a lack of exposure, to um, essential skills that kids pick up at different stages of life. And at 2, no doubt, your child would have probably liked to go out in a park and run around, discover things in the natural world and amongst, the human world in her own way. And now she can't. So that is definitely a disadvantage. However, there's one thing that I'd like you to be mindful of is that many times the atmosphere at home, and you may think that your 2-year-old doesn't understand the conversations that you're having, the kind of gray, heavy cloud that hangs within homes nowadays due to the news that is, coming through, the kind of conversations you have on the phone, the chat that you have on the social media is also heavy, that it seeps into our being, right? And little children are, as I said earlier, like sponges. They will absorb every bit of your anxiety and your sadness and your the moods that you get into. And it's so important to uh, sort of look at your own self from within and make sure that indeed in good chunks of the day you can put that aside. So use the worry breaks, use whatever you can, use other kind of social media platforms, use other
Right.
activities at home which make you happy. If you're happy and if you're able to get in some spontaneity and joy in your interactions with your 2-year-old, then things might begin to look a little different. So please be mindful of that. And of course, as much as you can, again, you have to use the screens. You don't have a choice, but you can also use a lot of other you can symbolize it through animal stories. So tell a lot of
Yeah.
stories, child, I would say. Tell lots and lots of stories with animation. Animation meaning you becoming animated, not animated movies, but yeah,
Right.
and yeah. So bring in that playfulness within
Right.
yourself, and when you talk about those stories about animals and lions and foxes and rabbits and all of that, bring in human characters as well, and try and sort of blend it together.
Yeah.
So children respond very well to animal characters, and they can immediately relate it to human beings as well. So use a
That's
lot
right.
of uh, yeah
In fact,
material.
Dr. Sen,
Hmm.
you brought up a point that would have been my next question in any case, that,
Hmm.
all the struggles, the challenges that we are going through at home as adults, we are subconsciously anxious all the time, whether it's aggression, and it comes out in different ways, right? It's coming out in aggression, whether with the children or within ourselves, there's conflicts between couples, there's anxiety over
Yeah,
finance, job loss, disease, all of that. So I think that's another point. We just don't realize that children are picking up on all of that. So
of
I guess that's
course,
a
of
note to
course.
all of us. Right.
Yes, 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 yes.
Kriti's brought up a point that we were discussing earlier before the show about children with special needs. So Kriti's question is, what about children who were undergoing occupational therapy in person? Since they are stuck at home, it's like we're seeing them go back to where we started from. It's so overwhelming. That is another issue that you must be facing a lot with your children also.
Yeah, that's a very hard and sad truth, actually. Um, a lot of children who used to come at Children First, we run services for little children who have
Right.
so-called special needs, and they do come for OT or
Right.
speech and language or social skills development, which is a very hands-on kind of a work. So over the years, we had developed models where we would work with kids, and they would often come thrice, sometimes 5 times in a week for therapies. And those kids who range anywhere, from 2 years of age to maybe 10 or 12, have taken the hardest hit because I mean, I can share with you that at Children First, we've had to close down all those services. And just as we were beginning to open it in the physical space again, we started in October very tentatively with all the safety measures. And by January, February, we were really hopeful because things were picking up
Right.
again. And boom, by
Again.
the beginning of March, everything just went out of the window. So what we have done and is to create as many online modules as possible and work very closely with parents. So the parents have almost become semi-therapists themselves. Of course, it's always important to do that. We earlier on also we would work very closely with parents. We had to help them understand what the therapy is about, what they could do at home. But that has become much more. It's taken another dimension altogether, where we are so again, for a young child who already has difficulty with attention or has a hard time understanding social cues, is not going to sit in front of a screen and take instructions. Many of the older kids are doing very well because they're already very skilled with screen and all that, yeah, with the digital media.
Sure.
But the younger ones are really really struggling. So again, my suggestion would be to link up with your therapist and see what you can do online as much as you can, and try and create a mini maybe OT gym at home. Get whatever material you have. I mean, if you have bean bags, or if you can get a trampoline from somewhere, if you get I'm sure you have um, clothing and linen of different textures. You can get that out to create OT at home. There are many ways
Right.
of doing it. Indeed, in our website, if you're interested, at Children First website, some of our occupational therapists have created small modules of how to make little games at home, which are both fun but also take care of OT needs. So if you want to go into that, and I'm sure other organizations have done it too. So everybody's trying their best to be creative, to think out of the box, to do whatever they can during this very, very hard time indeed. Yeah.
Dr. Sen, I mean, this is the toughest part of this conversation, and it's about loss. It's about the tragic deaths that have happened where children have lost very, very close, beloved family members, sometimes parents, sometimes both parents. Those who are left behind are also facing terrible, terrible repercussions, terrible impact of the entire scenario. How do we as caregivers take care of our children who've gone through such trauma?
Yeah, yeah, that is indeed one of the hardest challenges we have now. Also because when COVID enters a family and people take ill, then they have to isolate, and sometimes the parents might have got it and they get separated from their children, and you can imagine what would happen, or the impact, the emotional impact on children who, after getting separated from the parents, one of them dies. I mean, it's devastating. See, this is a, I mean, again, I'd like to go back to, the nature of what we are facing a bit, and then I'll come back to that
Sure,
question again, Parul. Um,
sure.
this is like a huge natural and man-made, I would say, because a lot of what we're seeing in today's, in our country could have been prevented, right? We all know
Right.
that, and we talk about it, right? So it's, and I'm sure that that's everywhere. I was speaking to some other young person who lives in Europe now, after having gone through therapies in our center, and she was saying that, people here also complain all the time about lack of resources or what the government is doing. So I'm sure nowhere can you get it perfect, because there is no
Sure,
perfect answer to this, isn't it? We're all
sure.
trying to find our way through this. And so it's partly, the lockdown is man-made, so the trauma that we are facing, in the isolation, etc., is partly man-made. So it's a natural come man-made disaster of nothing, of a scale which we've never seen before. Like, for instance, when you have a tsunami or an earthquake, firstly, it is usually localized to a certain area. It also is time bound. It comes and it goes away. It creates havoc, destruction, death, and it goes away, and it leaves us with a, uh, you know, to to clear up the
Yeah,
chaos
but
and
at least
and then
it's over. At least
it's over. Yeah, it's
yeah,
over.
right.
Absolutely. Here, there's nothing, no sight of
Yeah,
it. I mean, every time we begin to, generate some hope, try our best to kind of, begin to get back on our feet, it just comes and bam, it
yeah,
just knocks us down
right.
again. So it is a hugely traumatic experience. It's a disaster of uh, proportions that, kind of completely unseen, unheard of, right? Yeah. And it will have its impact on the psyche of human beings across the globe, and particularly people who have lost. Now, in the beginning, it was, as you said, Parul, that it was like at a bit of a distance, so we were seeing it as a, uh, you know as witness of trauma, right, happening to people, but happening out there, scared but not so scared. But right now it's entered our homes, and it's taking away near and dear ones, so it's actually crept in through the doors and windows, isn't it? And when that happens, the key thing is to come together as a family and a community. When you have losses, when you have to bear, sort of deal with grief and such severe loss, and trauma at the same time, the key things that actually protect you i- is a strong and family that is together, which supports each other. It is a community that can come together and support you, right? So that the trust is rebuilt again. To know that although I have had a huge loss, and I'm going through unbearable grief, there are people who care and who can reach out, who can empathize, who can be with me. That togetherness, the physical comfort that you get from being with each other, is vital. And unfortunately, in today's times, in these kind of circumstances, even that has been taken away. That needs to be questioned. And again, when something like this happens to a child, we have to bend over backwards to make sure that extended family, siblings, cousins,
Yeah,
and the larger state, the larger machinery, the community, has to come together to support them, has to come together to create spaces where there is physical, emotional comfort, and a degree of assurance that we are there for you. And I know that you can't make false promises, which actually goes again. It becomes counterproductive. Soon, children begin to see through them and say that, we can't even trust this person, because all he's doing is saying that, oh, everything is going to be sab theek ho jayega, everything will be okay. Everything will not be okay. It's important to acknowledge that. Yeah, if you've lost a parent, your life will change forever. But how will it change? Do you have any agency in that? Are there people to support you through that? Those are crucial things that we have to, engineer and create for our young people who have lost it. We have to come to, and a lot of, in fact, you know, it's heartbreaking as well as heartwarming to see how the community is coming together. There is a child on the spectrum, autism spectrum, 6-year-old, who just these 2 days ago lost his mother, and the father was quarantining you know for COVID, and it was the teenage brother who was looking after this kid, and but the whole community, the outpouring of sympathy and empathy and resources that came, was again heartwarming. That indeed, one thing that this COVID has done, the second time particularly, it has brought the community together.
Yeah.
Although we have felt completely abandoned by the state, but I think that as people,
Right.
we have found resources within ourselves,
Right.
and that is heartwarming. And that's what we need to do. We have to create an atmosphere where we can reach out. So whatever the authorities say, that the authorities might say, no, 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 you can't go into that. Even if there is a young child who's alone and one
Yeah.
parent is quarantining and the other is dead, how can
Right.
you have rules? And I mean, maybe there are risks of other people contacting COVID. So be it. They could be people who have gone through COVID who might be, beckoned at that
Able
time
to.
and said, "You
Right.
go in because you've got your vaccinations, you had your COVID, so you go in." Extended family who've gone through that process should be able to go in. Other, they could be people from school, from the community who could go in. Again, many schools have taken it up amongst on them to, teachers, principals who are reaching out to families who, young people who have lost their grandparents or parents. And I know that for a fact. And that's really
Yeah.
heartwarming. And I know that parent communities have come together to support each other, like how in different schools. And those are important. It's so important to come together and make these groups, be proactive about it. And,
Right.
I know it's hard at this time because, there's again so much of helplessness and hopelessness that you give up so easily then, and there's an onslaught of it all the time. So to find that courage, and to say that yes, we will see each other through this, right? And of course there'll be losses, of course there'll be
Yeah.
pain, there'll be grief, and of course there'll be perhaps a different tomorrow. And I can't even envisage going back to how we used to live because of so many reasons, not
Right.
just because of the trauma and the losses that we face, but also realizing what we have done to our planet. I think we need to reflect and think about the given of what success means and what development means, you know, and we have to come together as a community to think about our priorities and what we can leave for our children. You know, um, these are hard questions, but this may be a good time to ask them. This may be our learning from it all. Yeah, where we can create a new normal, not allow a new normal to come and
Right.
kind of
Right.
take over our lives. No,
Yeah.
create a new normal indeed. Yeah, and
For sure.
and
Right.
yeah. Hmm.
This has been the most impactful period of our lives, the biggest game changer in all our lives, I think. So,
Yeah,
and like you said, that, we are thinking that, okay, once this is over, we'll go back to our old normal and everything will be all right. But things will not. I think it's quite clear. We're going to be wearing masks for a long, long time, and we better be doing that. It's
yeah,
the virus is not going anywhere. It's just going to keep mutating, third wave, fourth wave, God knows what we have to deal with in the future. There is no old
yeah,
normal coming back, that's for sure. I have a question
yeah.
from Sonia. Sonia says, how to deal with 11th graders. Well, I'm dealing with one myself, so yes. Next 2 years are
Hmm.
important for their career and they're totally unfocused with so much trauma. Should we just leave them for now? Not just that, 11th and 12th are the best years of your school life. We
I
remember it
know.
for a lifetime. Even today, if you look back, the years that you remember are 11th and 12th, and these kids are spending it at home. So, yeah, obviously they're unfocused. They have no clue what to do. So, should we just
Yeah.
leave them? Leave them be?
I don't think they might yet again feel abandoned. I think we
Sure.
all, as families and young people, are feeling abandoned by a lot of people who we
Right.
thought might come and help us and take over and create systems around us. It's not happening, right? So, as families, if we also take a similar stand, although on the face of it, they might say, "Okay, I don't want to see your face," and that's what a lot of young people are saying to their parents.
Yes.
But at the end of it all, they also turn towards us looking for some kind of support, assurance that things will become okay. So I don't think leaving them completely on their own is a good idea. It's important to understand that this is a phase which is not only one of the most fun and fulfilling years of
Yeah.
school life. Stressful also, no doubt, because our
Sure.
exams, 12 boards are
Of
always
course.
stressful. But also, in many ways, it makes young people into who they are in years to come. It's a time when identity is forming, isn't it? Yeah. And a large part of that identity is dependent on their view of the world, their view of themselves, and how they see their future unfolding. Unfortunately, that future is very, very uncertain today. And what we therefore again need to do is to dive into, again, so in the here and now, some of the suggestions, and I hope you were listening when we were talking about how to, loosely structure our day, to have those open discussions about what does education mean right now for us. And education does not have to be online classes, classwork, and homework anymore. That you can, kind of depart from. You can say, okay, you could maybe at least switch on your laptop when your classes are on, and at least do the interesting ones if you can. But if you can't, that's okay. But
Yeah.
if there's a certain chapter or a topic we covered, do you want to delve into that? Do you want to again, do some research? Should we have a discussion? Should we see a documentary about it? So make it much more interesting to be able to sustain that, right? Their role as a student, their role as an adolescent, as somebody who wants and needs to connect to other young people. How do you do that? How do you make that happen? Do you watch Netflix party? Do you going to get into another, such social space? And how regularly do you do that? Do you uh, play multiplayer video games with your friends and connect with them and also exchange other stuff? Those are things that must be discussed. You can't leave it completely up to them, because then the danger is that they might slip into both screen addiction and perhaps into phases of, or yeah, indeed, anxiety, depression, and sometimes even more serious mental health difficulties. Yeah. So it's important to give their day a structure, but it's equally important to again flesh out their lives. They again think about this. The identity is not formed just by the future, but what you have experienced in your life up to the
Yeah.
time you're 17, 18 years
Right.
old. And it's important to bring those things up. And as I said, you can rewrite your life story, right? So we call
Right.
it reauthoring. Reauthoring is
Reauthoring. Yeah.
reauthoring is something we use in therapy. And many times when we are doing therapy with young people, we again go back into their past, and they're able to see it in a different light with different lenses. Something that might have been really anxiety provoking at 6 years of age might seem that, oh my God, I actually overcame such
Yeah.
difficulties, and I did this and I did that. And I had such good friends, and I had to leave school and go to some other school, but I can still remember them. I can maybe connect with them once more. So that again gives you a sense of identity, and young people need to do that right now, so that
Yeah.
they're not completely, anchorless. Otherwise, there is a
Sure.
danger that if you leave them to their own devices, they may feel that they don't have any anchors at all. And it's important to do that, right? To give them a semblance of structure, to give them a semblance of meaning, and that can come through collaborative work. You can't, you again, I'm emphasizing this, you can't tell them what's good for them, but you can definitely create a safe space to discuss it with them, so that they can pour their hearts out and talk about things that they value, and then connect with those things.
In fact, what I found, I'm very impressed with a lot of youngsters, the older teens. They're actually helping parents, and a lot of, like, the parent teacher society in our school, we've got together just to create resources, connect people in resources. And the kids are helping, and they're doing a
Yeah,
wonderful job. Just
yeah.
verifying all those WhatsApp forwards, calling up people, finding out if resources are available, updating the resource bank. So it's I think they're also finding some kind of, like you said, value, or some purpose in
That's
what they're
wonderful.
doing. Yeah, that's
Absolutely, the value and purpose in what they're doing. And
yeah.
what they found is, in traumatic situations, when again, in a situation like a tsunami or an earthquake, when a community starts recovering, the young people, if they're given responsibilities, altruism, you call it, and
Right.
if you have an altruistic purpose in your life, your own healing becomes much better. So you have a purpose,
Right.
just as you rightly said, right? You have a purpose. You feel that you're a part of a larger community, because I mean, uh, of course, it goes both ways. I'm sure that adults and other young people are trying to help you, but equally, if you're able to take charge, have agency in this whole chaotic world right now, then that helps you to feel more empowered, and it definitely helps in healing. It's a well
Absolutely.
established fact. So that's a great
Right.
thing that your school community is doing. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Mm.
absolutely, and I'm sure there must be various other groups that have also involved. We know of a lot of college groups that are doing it. I'm sure at the school
Yeah.
level also many must be doing it. Communities, like you
Yeah.
said, it's amazing how people have got together.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Sen, just to sum up, we'll just take another few minutes of your time. Just to
Sure.
sum up, we know the future is going to be tough, and children are not going to be left without scars of the pandemic for years to come. We also know that children are resilient, time will heal, they'll bounce back, all of that is there. time may not be the only medicine. So what is it that we parents can do to mitigate all those scars that are bound to happen?
I think, yeah, this is indeed going to be a summary of all that we talked about
Yes,
today, right?
yes.
Firstly, of course, I would, if you want to categorize it, create these emotionally safe spaces at home, right? Try and create a structure and give them a sense of purpose and meaning. Also, a sense that they can actually dip into activities and connections that give them pleasure and joy despite the lockdown. Yeah. Uh, if a child is indeed going through um, palpable loss and trauma within the immediate family, then the whole community needs to come together, and that's absolutely vital, right? And the last thing I would say is that to give them a sense of agency, to give them a sense of um, uh, you know empowerment by involving them in this whole process of fighting it together, of coming together to be able to fight it. And that, I think, is the biggest healing factor. So these are protective, these are preventive measures that I'm talking about. It isn't the here and now, it helps you immediately, but for young people particularly, if they feel in control to an extent, if they and also, of course, the other thing perhaps I missed out on is to look within yourselves as adults as to what our internal world is like, because children are very quick to pick that up. And if we are able to have a semblance of stability in our own lives, then that will actually rub off on our children. So, yeah, all these things taken together is what I would say is a summary of today's discussions that we had, Parul. And
Right. No,
if we are able to do
absolutely.
that as
Yeah.
families, as a community, it will be healing. So it's not as if we are completely helpless. We can do something. There will be, and if I may, I'll again come back to this last thing. Please question the given. Please question what we had put our children up to before the pandemic hit
Yeah.
us. The hyper competitive world where
Yeah.
you're constantly sort of wanting to bring the other person down to be able to get ahead in life, right? Do we need that anymore,
Do
or
we need
do we need the cooperation and the collaboration and the compassion that we see today? Must we hold on to it, or should we go back to how we used to be? Please think about it and give those values to your kids right now. This is the biggest opportunity we have to save ourselves and to save the world. I would urge you to see David Attenborough's latest documentary. It's just got released on Netflix. He's 93 and he's talking about his whole life's journey, about what he's seen happen to planet Earth, to Mother Earth, and what we have done to it. And it's coming back to bite us, right? And it's not about the saving the earth anymore. It's about saving ourselves.
saving
Yeah,
ourselves? Sure,
saving
sure.
ourselves. Yeah, and he says that
Yeah.
in no uncertain words towards the end of the documentary. Please watch it,
Yeah.
and you might get some answers from it. Right? It's heartbreaking to see what he has seen in his lifetime, one lifetime, and what he has seen. It's heartbreaking, and what we have done. Right? And we have to question.
Absolutely. Yeah,
We
it's
have to
time
question.
for introspection for sure. I think there are a lot of tough questions we all need to answer, and we owe it to our children. I think that let's just put it that
We
way.
owe it
If
to our children.
we owe
Yes.
it to our children.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dr. Sen. This has been a really, really, very knowledgeable, very informative session, because a lot of things we don't think about. We don't even realize we're doing subconsciously. We don't think it's in our control, but like you said, a lot of things can be in our control. To answer your question, I think Anjali had asked, no, Ashima had asked for us to save this video. Ashima, this is going to be on the Mom's Presso Facebook page. It's also on Mom's Press on the app. You'll find it. So you can always access it. I'd request everybody who's watching, in case you missed the first part, Dr. Sen went into a pretty detailed description of, the things that we can do. So please do watch that. It's definitely something which you will find very useful. Once again, Dr. Sen, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I hope it helps. Thank you. Thank you, Pardon.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.